Hi, this is Gerry Jenkins. We're now going to cover what's called the collection classes, and we're going to start with the what's called the list class. And the list class is very powerful. Um, when you're using it simply, it looks like arrays from Java or C++. But unlike arrays, you can insert into the middle of a list. You can delete items from the middle of a list. Uh, you can expand the list automatically. It is not at a fixed size. And a real important aspect is that you can put anything in the list of mixed types. They don't have to all be the same type. So list is an ordered collection of 0 or more references to Python data objects um, that are written as comma delimited values enclosed in square brackets. Let me show you one. So if I do square bracket and do 1 comma 99 comma true comma hello, this would make a list of these items. And so if I hit enter, you'll see when you evaluate a list you get the list back. But we can do things like assign a variable. So we'll say x is equal to this same list. Let me copy and paste to do that. Copy here, and we'll paste it after the x. Now x has that list, so if you hit x, you'll see that list. You can index into a list just like an array in Java or C++. So it can say x at location 0, and it uses 0-based indexing like Java and C++. So that gets out the first element of the list. I can say x of, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3. We have the last element is number 3. That should get hello. If you try to go beyond the list, you get an error. You can change the elements of a list. So I can say x sub 3 instead of hello. Let's set it to a float. And then we'll look at x, and you can see it's changed the last element of a list. And just like in C++ and Java, if you go outside the list and try to do an assignment, you get an error as well. So just that part, they look like arrays. And so how do you expand them? And we'll look at that. So let's go back and do a little thing here. So here's a list. It's very useful to have to use a list, set a variable to point to the list. And so here's the operators you can do. So first there's indexing, which we just explained. You can index and use it to the left of an assignment statement to change an element in the list. You can just use it as an expression and get the value fetched out of the list at a certain index. Indexing starts at 0. Concatenation, you can add to list. So let's add x to x, and you see it just concatenates the two lists into a longer list. I can concatenate, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and add that to a list of 9, 10, 11. And you see we get a new list that has all the elements combined. And then there's repetition. We'll concatenate any number of times. So it's like doing plus with a bunch of lists that are all the same. So if I want to make if I have a list that's 1, 2, 3, and I multiply it by 9, I'm going to get a list that has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 repeated 9 times. This is very useful if you want to initialize in a list to a certain size. So if I want a list that's set initially to all zeros, that's 10 long, that would make it. So that's the plus and multiply. Membership will ask is an item in the list. So let's look at our X list again. And let's look, is the value 25 in X? And it says it's not. But we can say is 99 in X? It'll say it is. We could say is 9.11 in X, and it says it is. So basically this is an operator you can use in an if statement or anywhere you want that returns a Boolean, and it evaluates is a certain value in a list. So that's the in operator. The length is actually a function rather than a method. So the use length You can use length to find out the length of any list. And so if we say length of x, we say it tells us it's 4 long. Now you notice, I just want to point this out, these are operations on any sequence. List is one thing that gives you a sequence of numbers, and all of these operators are available to anything that gives you a sequence of numbers. And we're going to learn a lot about different ones. There's range, there's what's called an iterator, there's a generator, there's tuple, and there's a lot of things that give you a range of numbers. Now this last one is called slicing, and this is to extract part of the list. And to make it useful, let me show you a slide here. So slicing, you give a list and then you do square brackets as if you're going to do an index, but this includes a colon somewhere in this expression. And these are different expressions you can do. So you can say start to end, it goes from the start index to 1 up to but not including the end index, so n minus 1. If you say start colon and you leave off the end, it starts wherever you want and goes to the end of the list. If you leave off the start position, it always starts at the beginning of the list and goes to whatever you specify as the end. And if you just do a colon with no start or end, it makes a copy of the whole list. Now you can also use negative numbers in either start or end, and they refer to counting backwards from the end. So the last element of a list is minus 1, and the second to last is minus 2. So if you say A minus 1, it gives the last item of the list. If you say minus 2 to the end of the list, it removes the last 2 items. It gives you the last 2 items of the list. And if you say colon to minus 2, it gives you everything except the last 2 items. So let's do a few of these. So let's look at x again. Now to make this simple, let's make a y, and we're just going to set it to a bunch of numbers. So say 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. Okay, so let's start with y. Slice from 2 to the end of the list. So 2, so we have 0, 1, 2. So 2 is the element that has the 3 value. So it goes from 3 to the end of the list. Let's do y from 1 to 3. So 3 was the element 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this should actually do from 2 and 3. There it is. So 1 is the second element in the list, and 3 is the fourth element in the list. But it doesn't include the fourth element in the list. It goes up to, but not including it. And so let's do x at minus 1. So we get the last item in the list. X minus 2 will give us, well, we didn't do that, right? Let's do minus 1 colon. Actually, will give us the same thing. It gives us a list with the last item. So all of these return a new list. So if I do x at minus 2 to the end of the list, we get the last 2 items of the list, and so on. Okay. So here's the first example you'll see in the book where you interact with the book. And so it has active code 3, and it explains what it does down here. So it creates a list with 1, 2, 3, 4. It says multiply the list by 3 and it prints it. And then it sets item 2 to 45 and prints the list. So let's run it. And what you can do whenever you see this, it may have some instructions, but in this case you can just play around with it. So this changes, it prints the first print is duplicating the list 3 times. So, but why it did this is my list is this list, but then you're putting this list inside of another list. So what it does when you multiply a list, it takes the elements of the list and repeats them and puts them into a new list. Since the element here of this list is another list, you end up with a list of 3 lists. So that's what it repeats here. So if you try experimenting and you remove these, so now you just have the list, the original list times 3, and you run it, you'll see it just duplicates the items within the same list. So that's a little subtle thing you can do here. Now, when you say my list 2 equals 45, let's run it. So where does the 45? This is showing you that you're actually dealing with references to objects. Because what you're actually doing here is you're taking this object, which is my list, and duplicating it 3 times. So you're making a new list that basically has a my list, and my list reference. And that's what it's actually repeating here. So if you modify my list to 45, and then you print out this list with 3 items, it modifies the original my list, and you'll see the reference to it shows up 3 times.